All right, diving in today, we're going to a place that's, well, kind of fascinating and kind of disturbing all at the same time. We're going to be picking apart a transcript, actually from a YouTube live stream. You know those Scouse sit-off videos?
Oh, yeah. I've seen those.
Yeah, so this one features a guy, Darren. Our mission, I guess you could say, is to really break down the language of online hate. What makes it tick.
Yeah, and it's easy to think, oh, it's just trolls, whatever, but it's way more complicated than that,
Yeah.
right? Online hate speech is, unfortunately, a growing concern. And, well, figuring out how it works is important to actually doing something about it. It has real-world consequences.
Absolutely. This isn't just like words on a screen. They have power. They really tap into something deeper, psychologically, I think. So as we were going through this transcript, what really jumped out at you? What's the strategy behind the language?
Well, one of the first things you notice is this constant othering. G uses, like, all these derogatory terms,
Yeah.
dehumanizing labels. He calls people creatures, anyone who disagrees with him, basically.
Right.
It's an old tactic, creates that us versus them thing, makes it easier to justify the aggression. Think about, propaganda throughout history. It often uses this tactic to dehumanize entire groups of people.
It's primal almost, this need to create those groups in, groups out groups. And Xi doesn't hold back. He attacks how people look, their intelligence, really goes for the jugular.
Yeah, pushing buttons, for sure. Yeah, triggering that insecurity, that anger. When you feel attacked personally, you're more likely to react emotionally,
Right.
not rationally. And that's when you're more likely to be swayed by this kind of message. He uses really personal insults, too, like, you look like a smackhead, designed to humiliate and get a reaction.
It's like he's trying to get that fight or flight response from
Yeah.
people. And then there's the casual violence in his language, threats. Even if he's trying to dress it up as dark humor, he'll talk about creatures of the night or joke about someone's father being like the dad of hell. It's scary.
It does unsettling. He's normalizing violence, even celebrating it. But it's all under this umbrella of entertainment, creating a sense of threat, a siege mentality. It resonates with people who feel like they're on the fringe of things, unheard.
Yeah, totally. And it's not just the aggression itself. It's almost like he's putting on a show. There are times when you feel like he's expecting, even wanting, a backlash, playing a character, this villain.
Yeah, that's where you get into that whole hate as entertainment thing. Figures like this, they thrive on controversy. Outrage means more clicks, more views, and eventually a bunch of followers who are really into it. And this is where platforms like YouTube, with their algorithms, come into play. It's all about engagement.
So he's like gaming the system,
Mhm.
exploiting how these algorithms work, and they drive so much of what we see online.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, the more engagement his content gets, even if it's negative engagement, the more people see it. And that visibility, it becomes influence and sometimes even profit, unfortunately. It's this bad cycle, that these platforms are trying to break, but it's tough.
It really makes you think how this one example, this guy, connects to these bigger systems. But one thing I thought was interesting, and maybe this is weird, is there's this like almost paranoid feeling in his rants too. He talks about being targeted by hateful people, makes himself the victim.
Classic tactic, really. Victim blaming. It's a way to not take responsibility and still feel righteous, even when you're the one doing the harm. By claiming he's the real victim, he can shut down anyone who disagrees with him and make it seem like he's the one being attacked.
Right. And it's really effective because people feel empathy and it taps into a sense of injustice like, hey, that's not fair.
Exactly. And it works even better online because information spreads so fast and the details and nuances get lost.
For sure. And it's not just about deflecting blame either. There's another thing about how he talks, and it's disturbing. The casual way he talks about women reduces them to sexual objects. What's the strategy there?
It's not just about trying to be shocking or edgy. It's more than that. It's about power, really, the traditional kind. By making women into just sexual objects, he's putting himself in a position of control, of dominance. And for some guys watching this, hearing this kind of locker room talk, it makes them feel validated, like it's okay to talk this way.
Yeah, it's like he's creating a space where that kind of talk, the aggression, the misogyny, it's not just okay, it's celebrated.
Exactly. And that's a big part of understanding this specific type of online hate. It's often really rooted in misogyny, this need to keep those traditional gender roles in place. And a woman who doesn't fit in that box, who speaks up, who's independent, she's a threat, and she becomes a target.
So it's not even just about silencing women, it's about controlling them, keeping them in line.
Exactly. And that's why it's so dangerous, right? It makes it seem normal, not just the hateful language, but the attitudes behind it. And those attitudes, they lead to real-world consequences for women. Violence, discrimination, it's all connected.
Okay, so we've talked about the individual things he does, the name calling, the attacks, the victim stuff, but when you zoom out, what's the bigger picture here? What's the impact of this kind of hate online?
It's the question that keeps a lot of us up at night. Because it's not just online anymore, is it? It spills out into the real world. It changes how we see each other, makes it harder to feel empathy. And it creates this environment where violence, it just feels more acceptable, more normal.
And you mentioned earlier the whole algorithm thing, how they can actually make this stuff spread more. What can we even do about that?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's really tough. Platforms like YouTube, they're under a lot of pressure to do something, to control the content, stop the hate speech. But it's a losing battle sometimes.
Because for every account they shut down, 10 more pop up, right?
Exactly. And it's not even just about taking down the bad stuff. We have to figure out why people are drawn to it in the first place. It's the algorithms, sure, but it's also that need to belong, to connect with something, the feeling that nobody's listening. A lot of people feel that way.
So it's like a tech problem, A&D, a people problem, all mixed into one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we need a bunch of solutions to tackle it. It's not just on YouTube or any one platform. It's on educators, lawmakers, and just regular people, too. We all have a role to play in this.
So what can we do as individuals? I mean, what's our part in all of this?
That's where it gets interesting, because we aren't just sitting here watching this stuff happen. We have choices, and we have voices.
But it feels so huge, you know? Like one voice against all this noise.
That's exactly why it's important to speak up. Every time. When you see hate, when you hear it, say something. Silence just makes the problem worse, makes those people feel stronger.
So it's about paying attention to what we're watching, what we're reading, even how we're talking online, and thinking about the impact of our words.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We can make the internet a place where this kind of hate is harder to spread, where it's not so welcome. We need more dialogue, more understanding, more empathy, really.
Empathy, yeah. That feels like such a rare thing online these days.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it's crucial. If we want to create a space online where everyone feels like they matter, like they belong, where everyone feels safe to be themselves.
We've been in some dark corners of the internet today, and it's easy to feel overwhelmed. But I keep coming back to what you said about having agency, about not being bystanders.
Right. We get to decide how we use this technology, how we process what we see online, and how we treat each other. Those are choices we make every day.
So how do we become smarter about what we're consuming online? How do we get better at spotting this stuff?
We start by being critical thinkers. Question what you see, question what you hear, and be honest with yourself about your own biases.
We all have them, right?
Of course, but we have to be aware of them so they don't stop us from seeing things clearly.
And be mindful of the words we use ourselves.
100%. Words are powerful,
Mm-hmm.
and they need to be chosen carefully, especially online. Things get taken out of context so easily.
So we need to build a culture of respect even when we don't agree on something.
Exactly. And never forget, there's always a real person on the other side of the screen.
This has been, well, it's been unsettling, but hopeful too. Unsettling because of the stuff we talked about, but hopeful because it reminds us that we have the power to change things.
I couldn't have said it better myself. We can make a difference.
It's kind of crazy when you think about it, how it all connects. Like you have these individual people saying these awful things, but then it ties into these much bigger problems.
Right. Misogyny, people being afraid, that feeling like they don't belong anywhere, it all gets mixed up together.
Yeah. And that's what makes it all so complicated. It's not like you can just like delete a comment or ban an account and it's solved.
Nope. It goes much deeper. We have to get at the root of it all. Why are people so full of hate? Where's it coming from?
And that feels like a, I don't know, a huge EE thing to fix.
It is huge. But we can't just give up. It has to start with teaching people, helping them understand. We need more empathy in the world.
Empathy. It's like this, I don't know, rare gem or something.
Maybe it is. But it's so important. If we want the internet to be a place where people feel safe, where they can be themselves without being attacked, empathy is key.
Totally. We've seen some messed up stuff today, and it's easy to just want to log off and forget about it. But I keep thinking about what you said before about how we're not powerless.
Exactly. We're not just along for the ride. We have choices to make every time we log on.
So how do we start being smarter about what we're seeing online? Like, how do we get better at recognizing this hate speech?
We got to use our brains.
Yeah.
Don't just accept everything you see and hear. Ask questions and be really honest with yourself about your own biases.
Because we've all got them, right?
Everyone. But we have to know what they are so we can see past them, Make sure they're not making decisions for us.
And we got to be careful about the words we're using, too.
Absolutely. Words matter, maybe more than ever online. Things get twisted around so easily.
We need to be respectful, even when we're arguing about something.
Yeah, and remember, there's an actual person on the other end of that comment.
This deep dive, it's been, well, a little disturbing, but hopeful, too. Like, yeah, we saw the bad stuff, but it also felt good to talk about solutions,
Exactly. We can make things better.
Well, on that note, I think that's all the time we have for this deep dive.
Been great chatting with you.
Same here. And to everyone listening, we'll leave you with this. What can you do to make the internet a better, kinder place for everyone? Think about it. And until next time, keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep fighting for a better digital world.